the awful thing about being parents. At least it used to be. The moment you get married and the moment you have a child, the marriage is no longer about you or your wife. The marriage is only about your kids. Now, in a culture such as this, where people are self-indulgent, where it's all about me, my fun, my rights, my this, my that, parents, kids are no longer as important. My sister-in-law babysits for a living. A few days ago, she was called for a job. She goes in. The kid is 3 months old. And the wife says, the mother says, it was my dream to have a child. I have it now. I'm also a CEO. And you go back to the saying of Jesus, you can't love two masters. It's very, very, very true. Okay. So, if you first realize that now that you are married and have a child, it matters very little, who you are, what you are, who your wife is, and what she is, as long as it's not abusive and destructive, you see. Then you say, okay, these are my kids. How do I want to teach them? What do I want to teach them? There are a couple of things you need to understand. They need public education or private education, because eventually you're going to die. I'm going to die. You're going to retire. I'm going to retire. These kids need a foundation. They need a savings. If you're a dentist and you say, I'm going to send my kids to school, I'm even going to fake a diploma for him because I know people who can Photoshop well, okay? You can take your son to your shop every day, teach him the art of dentistry. When you retire, your son has your shop. He doesn't need to go to school for 20 years. If, again, you have a lifestyle that has created a good amount of physical savings, you can kind of roam through life relatively comfortably. But for someone like me, someone like you perhaps, you kind of say, okay, I don't like education the way it's been presented, but I need my kids to have at least a bachelor's and then a master's, hopefully a PhD. Not because I believe in education, but I believe what education can do for them, which is get them a good job and then make money. Okay. Now, your kid will be very much like Ivy. He says, Dad, I thank you for this house. Thank you for this gigantic pool. Okay. Thank you for all the comforts you have given me. But I look at you, your life sucks. It has no meaning. You're rotting from the inside. I certainly don't want to be like you. More power to him. It's a great way of looking at things. But here are the things that he's not seeing. This is a man, despite all of his selfishness, okay, he created this life for his kids. He may not like it. He may not like the fact that he goes to work at 6 in the morning, comes back at 10 at night. But it's really for their comfort. And now at his age, this comfort, this privilege, he says, I don't want to be like my old man. I want something different. And he can only say that in a state of privilege. Remember, if you're really, really poor, stale bread will do. If you're really, really privileged, a loaf of bread that's been on the counter for an hour is too old for you. Okay? Now, we are creatures of our environment. And now the question is, where do you want to put their physical bodies? I'll tell you a story. In 2007, I resigned from Laney and I went to a different school, Folsom Lake College, to teach. Full-time position, 100 and some applicants. I got the job. These are, my young days where I use a lot of profanities, to some extent more animated than I am now. I scream in every class. And you should know that the reason why we are in this particular classroom is because for the past 14 or 15 or 20 years of being at Laney, I used to scream in my classes, not because I like screaming, but because I love ideas. They inspire me. I get drunk off of them. and my blood begins to boil and I lose control. It's like a demon overtakes me and I just begin to talk about these ideas in a very inspired, loud way. And then instructors begin to complain. We can't do our classes. Our students are listening to this guy more than us. And so they put me in a classroom. And if you pay attention, there's no classroom behind us. There's no classroom to the sides. We're in an island of our own, you see. So at Folsom Lake College, my attitude was very aggressive. Not aggressive because I was trying to bully students, but I just believe that if you want to teach something and if you're passionate about it, you have no choice but to be like that. You're very ambitious. And so, and add to the fact that this is a Republican environment. Everybody's a Mormon almost. Add to the fact that out of perhaps 15,000 student body, 14,950 were white, perhaps more. And so I began to talk about Christianity. I talk about racism and all that stuff. And these are like ideas that these kids have never heard. So it rubs them the wrong way. They're not open enough to appreciate the Gospel of Judas or the Gospel of Mary or the Gospel of Nicodemus, because these are not the books that they've heard. They have never really given it much thought about what it means to be a minority. None of those things. They haven't really given it much thought what it means to be poor. And so I used a lot of profanities, and again, the way I was. And then I realized this is just a wrong fit. I resigned. I said, you know what? I went into teaching to play with ideas and to fall in love with ideas. I can't do this if I'm surrounded by people where at every point they just go nuts. I quit. And I said, you know what? If I have to go back to the car wash and wash cars and read and write, I'll be fine. Then as the years went by and I got married and I had my own kids, I realized I don't want them to hear curse words. See, I didn't know this before having children. But then I realized how much energy and time it takes parents to protect their kids' intellect, their kids' psyche, their kids' ears. There is nothing wrong with porn, man. Just don't let your kids watch it at the age of 2 or 3 or 4 or 10. Do you know how many students I've had over the years at Laney that they started watching porn when they were 13 and now they're 30? They come to my office and say, I am lonely. I want to be in a relationship. I just don't know how to be with a woman because the only thing I want from her is her body, nothing else. But I really want emotional connection. And then you say, well, what the hell do you do with this? I mean, it's no different than any other addiction. It's going to take you a lifetime to recover. So, let's say from 0 to about 7 or 8, your kids have been relatively healthy. And now the question is, what now? The worst thing that can happen to any kid is idle time, where their time is not filled with things. It's kind of like this class. If my teaching, if the way I am bores you, you have a lot of free space in your mind. And then you begin to daydream. And then before you know it, half hour passes by, you catch yourself and say, oh man, what the hell was he talking about? And so you want to get them involved in things that you think they enjoy. And kids are physical when they're young. You need to make sure they burn off a lot of fuel. So when they come home, they just want to eat and fall apart, go to sleep. If you have money, don't send them to public school. Not because public school is bad, but because it may expose them to things that may take so much energy out of you to restore. Send them to a Catholic school. It's not because you love Christianity, it's not because you love Catholicism. They expose them to certain ideas. Because in this culture, it's just too much stuff going on. You know, Bill Maher has this really interesting saying that there was a time you used to ask your son, so son, what do you want to be? And he would say an astronaut or a doctor or this or that. He says, now when you ask your kid what you want to be, he says, well, I don't know if I should be a man or a woman or this or that or this other thing. He says, everything is complicated now, you know. And so there is nothing wrong with, you know, you choosing what orientation you want to be, as long as it's organic and it's not manufactured, and it's very, very difficult to tell. But the point is, ultimately, is you have to, Russell, first of all, study society really, really well. Because if you don't look at the problem well, there's a good chance you won't be able to solve it. Look at America well. Study capitalism, study media, study technology, study what this culture does to men, to women, to relationships. Study the degree to which people are discontent and unhappy. Study loneliness, study despair, study depression. Study the fact that pharmaceutical companies create names to sell drugs. These are important things for you to know. Then study what takes place in Oakland. Because whatever lives in Oakland finds itself in this room, in high school, in junior high, in elementary school. Whatever lives in Oakland lives there. Okay? It's not like a shelter where the tornadoes don't go in. That's not true. And so the question is, what the hell do you want to do now? That depends on how much time you got, how much energy you got, how much you love and care for your kids. Because if you and your wife, for example, are arguing all the time about every goddamn thing under the sun, you don't have energy for your kids. And the other thing you need to know is that kids, every child out there is like the prodigal son. They're going to go out there and mess things up. That's what kids do. You have 4 kids, you take them to Target, you buy a toy for $50, 10 minutes later it's broken. Do they know how hard you had to work to make $50? No. Do they care about your time? That in fact you have to give your blood and time and life and youth away to make $50? They don't care about any of those things. Okay? They were governed by a whim. I saw Spider-Man, you know, on TV, I want it. But I don't just want like a stick man. I want something that moves and webs come out. Okay? And 10 minutes later it's destroyed. Now, because kids really take everything that you have, everything. And it's something I usually tell my students. If you want to get married, come and talk to me first. If you want to have children, come and talk to me first. And I say that because these are things that I have been kind of interested in for a long, long, long time. And I myself have made a lot of mistakes. But I don't play the blame game. You did this to me and you did that to me. I say, okay, I had a play in this. I had a hand in this. I did this because it was my choice. And I made it my choice because I felt, and because I didn't understand feelings too much, I felt that this is the right thing to do. Time passes and it reveals to me that my choice was wrong. You know, and I sit and I write about it. You know, all the lectures that for this class and other classes, I have sat and written what lives inside me for the past 30 years. I don't really care about what Plato said. I don't care what Socrates said. None of those people are important for me. I live in the 21st century. I am from a culture very, very different than Jean-Paul Sartre and Socrates. Events are taking place inside me. There's history inside me, and I want to understand it. So when someone says, I want to get married, I say, are you sure you want to like come to my office? We can sit down and talk about, you know, your age, whether you have money or you have any stability in your life, whether your past has any trigger points. Because if any of those things exist inside you, there's a good chance you're going to fall apart. Don't do it. Just wait until you're 40. So, but I can't have a child. That's another issue, especially if you're a woman. Okay. So, if you know how images impact, direct, create emotions, and then create thinking, and then they're like GPS, they guide you. Good job. You know?
The only thing for me right now is because I'm at an impasse. My 14-year-old, he's in high school now, and you know they're telling him to pick pick a direction. They're going to pick all their classes and stuff like that. But she loves robotics, and you also like, yep, absolutely. Archaeologists and stuff like that. But I slowly see like the fun or the passion or whatever like that, and because there's so much work to it.
Yeah.
It's slowly dying. It took me forever to figure out what I wanted to do because I was afraid of what the next step is if I would fail or something. So I don't know what to do. We want to push him for a good job and stuff like that. But then also I want him to be happy. So
Yeah, I don't want to talk about happiness because I don't really believe in it. Yeah.
But what I'm hearing is stability is with the house.
Oh man, yeah.
Society.
Yeah.
It's more what our views are.
Here are a couple of things. Let's kind of connect your question to Ivy's question a little. For the longest time, I used to go to Yosemite during wintertime, where everywhere blanketed by snow. And there is only one, camp open, and that's Pine Valley, I think. And, you tent and then you walk, and there is this open space. And snow is everywhere. And you say, I want to go to over there, that other point. And then as you look at the snow, you realize there are some footprints, but there are also places that have no footprints. And there is something about all of us in this class that we want to create our own path. We want to follow our own passion. We want to create our own meaning. And so what you do is you say, okay, I want to create my own footsteps on the snow. And you go. The first couple of steps are okay. When you go to the third one, you go in this much deep in the snow. And it's really, really tough to drag yourself out. And you do. And then you take another step. And this time you go waist deep. And then you go shoulder deep, And then after 5 or 10 minutes, you say, man, I've only taken 10 steps. And I got 5 miles to go. And then you say, screw this. I'm not going to do this anymore. You're sweating, you're exhausted. And in the snow, high elevation, your breathing becomes a little more difficult. So you backtrack. And then you say, I'm going to put my foot in the steps that have been created by other people. This is called conformity. Because it really takes so much energy to figure out what's meaningful, what you're passionate about. And whenever you're passionate about something, when you know what you want to do, you have an entire society standing against you. And you may think when you're young, it's fine, it's good, it will exhaust you. Consider the following. Imagine, and forgive me for doing it this way, but because we're both, parents, and these are things that could happen to us this day and age. Let's just say your son enjoys the opposite sex. Okay, let's just say. And it's something that you're comfortable with because you're a married man and you're married to a woman, and your parents were married to the opposite sex, and your grandparents were married to the opposite sex, male, female, and this is part of your culture, who you are. And though you want to be open-minded and all that stuff, the truth is you want to be open-minded in distance. You don't want to be open-minded when it's right there in front of your face. It's too much. And so one day your son comes to you and says, Dad, I don't know, there is again, thanks to Alex and Ivy for encouraging me to watch Sopranos. There's a scene in the show where the daughter and the father are sitting having steak or food. And she looks at him and says, Dad, I took some drugs because I needed to do well on the test. And the father goes nuts. And then he says, why did you tell me? He says, well, you told me you're a mobster, so I thought, if we have a moment together, it's intimate, it's close, it's personal, I can trust you can trust me. And I'm telling you, I just did drugs just once. And the point I'm trying to make is this. Before the son comes to you, this poor young man has to go through all these inner struggles and conflicts. Why can't I just be attracted to the opposite sex? What is wrong with me? And you have a culture. I mean, maybe not today, but perhaps, 20 years ago or 10 years ago. What's wrong with me? Who am I going to tell this to? And then you have a journal. And then you can't sleep. You have anxiety. You have confusion. You have stress. Everything about your life is falling apart. And then after many, many battles on the inside, you have a good day with your father. Both of you are like at a pub, drinking some beer. You're just, talking about casual things. There's a good amount of love and care. And he says, Dad, can I tell you something? Now, him mistakes this openness for you can be told anything. And you have the capacity to hear anything. He says, Dad, I have a boyfriend. Yeah, son, I have lots of boyfriends too. Dad, I'm romantically involved with this man. And it kind of jolts your system a little bit. You have no idea what to do. And you're going to be angry. You're going to push him out as an outcast. You have no idea how to tell your wife. You have no idea how to tell your parents. I mean, you have an entire web of people and communities. What the hell do I do now? Now imagine if it was me from the Middle East. I'd probably just have a heart attack and die. Not because I don't think, my son has the right to do whatever he wants to do or be whoever he wants to be. Culturally, it's something that our people, they have not been exposed to. Okay. And so your son says, I want to live my authentic life. What the hell do you do with your father, who's a Christian? What the hell do you do with your parents who have no idea what this stuff is all about? What do you do with your grandparents? Heterosexual relationships are immensely complicated and they're becoming more and more complicated. Other forms of relationships are even more complex. And then you say to your son, listen, why not take the road that other people have taken before you? It's the path of conformity. The signposts are there. You go to school, you get a job, you get married, you have children, you bring food, then you get all together, all of you, then you get sick, then you die. That's it. Why do you want to deviate from this path? And he says, because I'm passionate, because this is who I am. And then you say, if you happen to be very open-minded, very educated, and I don't mean academically, that you have sat and thought about this stuff. It's kind of like, we had a friend some years ago. He went to his father and said, I want to be an artist. And the father says, I work for the oil refinery. I also play the violin in an orchestra in Iran. What I got to tell you is this. It's very difficult to make a steady income by doing art. You can do it, but I'll tell you, you will not have a physical, stable life. And if you don't have any money, your emotions are all over the place. Intellectually, you'll get confused. A woman may be attracted to you because you're an artist, but they will leave you because you can't provide them any stability. If you want to take that path, if you think you can live in this hurricane for the next 40 years, fine. As long as you know what you're doing. But if you have any ridiculous fantasies about yourself, it's like, some years ago I had all these athletes in my class, 40 of them. The class, 80 people, 40 of them were football players. And they would say, 49ers, they're going to like me. Broncos, they're going to like me. And I would tell them, there are 300 colleges, just colleges, forget four-year schools. Some of you will get nowhere. No one's going to pick you. No one's going to like you. At least have a backup plan, man. Get some ridiculous degree. Don't be a complete idiot. It's beneath you. I don't think very many people can have meaningful lives. I think meaningful lives is like any sport. You have to be a profoundly elite athlete to make it to the top 5. Maybe you don't want to be a Cristiano Ronaldo. Maybe you don't want to be Messi. Maybe you don't want to be a Muhammad Ali or a George Foreman. Maybe you just want to be like a Manny Pacquiao or a Floyd Mayweather. They're profoundly good, but maybe you just want to be a boxer that's like number 10 in the world, and you can make a decent income. But for the most part, creativity is like the sports for the heart or the sport for the mind. And there are lots of applicants out there, and the competition is fierce. I think, first of all, when you're young, you don't really have access to the future, so you make all these like ridiculous choices in life. I never talk to my nephews or my niece about philosophy. Never. I send them my lectures once in a while, and I tell them, only listen if you are having a difficult day, but overall, you're fine. Why though would I want to disrupt the GPS that they have? In the Gospels, there are two worlds described to us. One is the world of Caesar, and one is the world of God. And for those of you who don't like this particular kind of language, one is the world in which you and I have to live on a day-to-day basis. The other world is your passion, your creativity. Now, you may enjoy writing, but listen, this is a philosophy class, and this is Amir Sabzavari. I am profoundly anal. I am academic. I want the format to be a certain way. I want the font to be a certain way. I want the color of the font to be a certain way. I want paragraphs to be a certain way. I want information. And then I want a bibliography. So if you are passionate and creative about your writings, don't give me that stuff for your essay. You know why? Red mark is going to be everywhere on your essay. And then you're going to say, why am I not being understood? Why is this guy offending, my passion? Because your passion doesn't belong to Laney, man. Your passion belongs to a different place. Know your environment really, really well. So if your son, for example, likes robotics, okay? By the way, Sac State has a great program, but that's besides the point. That's in Sacramento. You need to tell him that school really has one function. I don't know about the robotics program, but for the most part, instructors are anal. They're very dry. They're there to simply give you information. They want to make sure you can memorize the information and spit out or vomit the information really, really well. That's their job. Okay? So, as someone who is passionate, don't walk into the classroom. Don't make my mistake. Because when I went to school to do philosophy, my assumption was, I am going to go to the class, this man or this woman is going to come in, and it's going to be Socrates. They're going to talk like Socrates, quack like Socrates, walk like Socrates. Man, I was disappointed. This is not a philosophy class. It's not a philosophy teacher. This is no philosopher. This guy doesn't know what philosophy is, and yet he was given a PhD. So I think if you're passionate about something, do it outside of school. Or if you're really, really lucky, find someone who understands your passion. Otherwise, your passion will be destroyed. Look, for those of you who want to look at Christianity in a relatively creative, metaphoric way, Jesus Christ is a man who lives in passion. What does society do to his passion? Kills it. What does Malcolm X, what is his faith in society? Kills it. Martin Luther King Jr. kills it. Socrates kills it. If anything you need to know about society is that whatever passion, authenticity, creativity that lives inside you, it gets destroyed. So if you know this by looking at history well, reading history well, you say, okay, my son is really good at this. Education will destroy it. I will tell him, go to school for money. We'll send you to a different place for passion. Now you have a good balance. The lion and the lamb can lay together harmoniously. Anyone else before we Yes, Joaquin. We have a couple minutes.
Why do you say that? I don't really like it.
But you don't have anything to say?
Well, I actually do, but you always like.
Yeah, because you want to say something. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, the question I had before was like about.
For those of you who need to leave, please leave. Yeah.
I only have 5
It's okay. Yeah.
I want to ask.
Yeah.
But I almost want to wait. So.
No, just ask it.
Okay, it was about. I mean, you were going to start talking about like mission and passion you kind of did, and drive for things. Talking about Cristiano Ronaldo.
Okay.
Turn that question about that guy.
Okay.
I just wanted.
You know, some people are very, very lucky in the sense that they are born when they're 5 or 6 or 7. They just realize they're really good playing soccer. I mean, the rest of us have to fumble around life for like 50 years to figure out what we're good at, only to realize we're really not good at anything. And even if you find that you're good at something, you're too goddamn old to do anything about it. So some people are just profoundly lucky, and I don't know why that is. I don't know how that is. You know, that at such a young age that, you know, in some ways, I mean, look, this is Russell. He's like almost 50. Forgive me, I know you're only 35. I mean, that's Chris, half his age. This is Ginning, half his age. She knows she loves philosophy. He knows he loves philosophy. That means for the next 30, 40, 50 years of their life, they just know what they like. The rest of us are not as fortunate. Okay? So you have Cristiano Ronaldo, you have Muhammad Ali, you have even some guy who's as lucky as Mike Tyson, okay, to run into someone who recognizes the anger and says, I'm going to channel this anger into this thing called boxing. Okay? And you make a fortune from it. Now, the problem is just being good is not enough. Because to be good, to remain good, and to excel, it takes discipline. Here's the thing you need to know about discipline. You may be a great creative writer, but when you go to someone who's really good at what they do and they've done it for a long time, they say, no, I need you to put your passion aside. Now you need to learn the mechanics. But you say, I'm here to write from my soul. And your teacher says, I don't care about your soul. I want to make sure that you have a mature way of expressing your soul. Your writing is good, but I want it to be perfect. Okay? And so what you have in cases of Ronaldo, Manny Pacquiao, and the rest of it is that, man, these people, I mean, they're like on the court, on the field, playing for 2-3 hours every single day. That's amazing. You know, next time you go to YouTube or you look at a beautiful painting, you should never kind of fall victim to just looking at what you see. When you see a great pianist, when you see a great painting, when you see someone who expresses ideas really, really well, go to Jordan Peterson, man, Google this guy, YouTube him and listen to him, and you realize this is amazing. Someone is willing to sit in a room, no drinking, no smoking, no TV, no talking, just plays with brush, paint, canvas, day after day after day after day. How could someone just not going out there enjoying a drink, talking to a friend? Even though they want to, they put that desire on the cross, say, no, I'm disciplined enough to do this. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, you look at this guy, okay? You say, oh, okay, I mean, you know, he looks a little tired, he looks a little this, he looks a little that. But he has no choice but to put his life on pause for the next 20 years, man, to raise his kids into healthy human beings for themselves, for them, and for society, hopefully. That's a great sacrifice. But you don't think that married people once in a while imagine walking away from the whole thing? Of course they do. Very much like some of in this class want to drop this class and go home. But you make the sacrifice. How do you make the sacrifice? I need the grade. I need to graduate. I like myself. I don't want to be a loser. We all make sacrifices. It just, at different stages of life, your sacrifices begin to change. We'll talk about meaning only if you're here on Tuesday Have a nice day, people.
All right. Very serious.
You too. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So